All right, everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive? Today, we're tackling something, well, kind of sticky.
Sticky is a good word for it.
Yeah, because we're wading into the murky waters of emotional cheating.
Oh, yeah. That's a topic a lot of people just don't want to touch.
Exactly. It can be so confusing, even taboo. But here's the thing. It's way more common than you might think.
It really is. In fact, and this is pretty wild, but 63% of therapists are seeing it way more often with couples these days.
Wow, 63%. That's a lot. And honestly, with everything being online now, all the social media and texting,
Yeah.
it's like those lines just keep getting blurrier.
Oh, absolutely. It's a whole new landscape for relationships, that's for sure.
Okay, so the mission for today's deep dive is to equip you with the tools to navigate this tricky terrain. By the time we're done, you'll be able to spot those red flags, understand why people stray emotionally, and most importantly, have some strategies to protect your own relationships, whether you're coupled up or not.
Love that. Knowledge is power, right?
100%. So right off the bat, let's address the elephant in the room. What exactly is emotional cheating? Because it's not always this black and white betrayal, is it?
It really isn't. And that's what makes it so tricky. It often lives in this gray area where even defining it can feel slippery.
Exactly. So how do we even know you when we've crossed that line? Or when someone else has, for that matter?
Well, the sources we dove into for this deep dive point to a few key differentiators, and I think secrecy is a big one.
Secrecy, okay. What does that actually look like, though?
Think like deleted messages, hidden interactions, basically anything that suggests you're leading a double life. If you're constantly worrying about your partner finding out about your conversations with someone else, that should be a red flag.
Right, that makes sense. Like, why hide it unless it's something you know is wrong?
Exactly.
So secrecy is out. What else?
Another biggie is if you find yourself constantly fantasizing about this person in a romantic way.
So it's not just about finding someone attractive or funny.
Mm-hmm.
It's about those deeper fantasies, right?
Right. Like, it's one thing to casually think, oh, they're cute, but if you're regularly daydreaming about leaving your partner for them, well, that's a whole different ballgame.
That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Daydreaming about an entirely different life with someone else. Okay, so we've got secrecy, romantic fantasies. What about that thing, I think it was in one of the articles, about emotional prioritization?
Yes, that's a big one because we all have close friends, right?
Yeah.
But how do you know when you're giving too much of yourself emotionally to someone outside the relationship?
Right, yeah, where's the line?
Imagine this. You're consistently choosing to spend your free time with this friend over your partner, confiding in them about your relationship problems, maybe even putting their needs above your partner's emotional well-being.
Okay, yeah, I can see how that would create a huge imbalance. It's like you're basically putting them in the partner role without them actually being your partner.
Exactly. And it's not that you can't have close friends or confide in people outside your relationship, but there needs to be that balance.
For sure. And let's not forget about physical chemistry. A little friendly attraction is normal, right? But what if it's more than that?
Right, yeah. If you're constantly feeling a strong pull towards someone or maybe fantasizing about what it would be like to be physically intimate with them, that's a huge red flag.
It is. It's like that quote we pulled from one of the articles. It said, emotional cheating becomes the scaffolding for physical affairs. It's infidelity in incubation. Chilling, right?
Totally chilling. And it really underscores that whole slippery slope thing, doesn't it? It's not about judging anyone, but it's about recognizing that progression, understanding how seemingly innocent things can escalate into something more serious.
For sure. Because like you said, it's rarely this intentional, malicious thing. It often starts small, almost without us realizing it.
Exactly. Recognizing the stages of that emotional slide is key to recognizing the warning signs and preventing things from escalating.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that progression. Why do people even find themselves on this path towards emotional cheating in the first place?
That's a great question. And one of our sources actually lays out this fascinating, almost a roadmap for how things can go wrong. They call it the relationship erosion timeline.
Ooh, relationship erosion timeline.
I like that. So let's walk through it. What's the first stage?
The first phase starts with what they call vulnerability factors. Things like, communication breakdowns, unresolved conflicts, basically. Those cracks that start to appear in the foundation of the relationship. Maybe you and your partner aren't talking like you used to, or you're feeling emotionally disconnected. And then you add in the constant pressure of comparison culture on social media.
Oh, yeah. Social media just amplifies everything, doesn't it? Suddenly you're comparing your relationship to these perfectly curated highlight reels. It's no wonder people start to feel inadequate or dissatisfied.
Totally. And when you're feeling vulnerable and disconnected, it's easy to seek connection elsewhere.
Which makes total sense, but also
Yeah.
scary
Huh.
because it's those seemingly small things, a little argument here, a bit of frustration there, that can actually become breeding grounds for trouble over time. Absolutely. And if those vulnerabilities aren't addressed, they can lead to the second phase, behavioral shifts.
Ooh, behavioral shifts.
Yeah.
This is where things start to get interesting. What are some signs to watch out for here?
Well, maybe your partner is suddenly super secretive about their phone. Like they're always hiding their screen or turning it away when you walk by.
Oh, yeah. Or they jump up to leave the room when they get a text.
Mm-hmm.
Or just like a general increase in those private conversations.
Exactly. Or maybe they're constantly making inside jokes with someone else, jokes that you're not in on. Or they're always talking about their work wife or work husband, and it starts to feel a little too close for comfort.
Right. And it's not to say that you can't have friendships at work, but there's a difference between friendly and, well, something more.
Right. And it's not just about specific behavior. Sometimes it's more about what's missing. Maybe your partner is emotionally withdrawn during your usual couple time, or they get super defensive when you try to talk about it.
Those are such subtle shifts. It's easy to dismiss them as nothing, especially when you're busy with life. But when you see the bigger picture, those shifts can definitely be warning signs.
For sure. And sadly, if those signs are ignored, things can escalate to phase three, emotional transfer. And this is where the real damage
Oh,
happens.
yeah. Emotional transfer, that sounds serious.
It is. This is where you're sharing really deep personal things with someone outside the relationship, seeking comfort from them during arguments, maybe even complaining about your partner to them.
Ouch. I can see how that would create an inappropriate bond. Like
Yeah.
you're basically getting your emotional needs met by someone who's not your partner.
Exactly. And often you start comparing your partner unfavorably to this other person, which just erodes the relationship even further.
So, not good. Not good at all. So let's say the emotional affair or, potential emotional affair comes to light. Is there a way back from this kind of betrayal? Can a relationship recover?
I get asked that question a lot. And honestly, it's definitely possible, but it takes serious work from both people. A lot of work.
So where do you even begin to repair that kind of damage?
Well, one of the sources we looked at lays out what they call a recovery roadmap. And the first step, which is absolutely crucial, is crisis management.
Crisis management. Okay, so we're talking full-on damage control mode.
Exactly. This means full disclosure, no holding back on the details. It might be painful, but true transparency is the only way to start rebuilding trust.
And that includes, like, telling your partner about the emotional connection, the conversations, the fantasies, all of it.
All of it. Though the source does recommend leaving out graphic sexual specifics if there weren't any physical encounters, which I think makes sense. The goal here is to be honest without being unnecessarily hurtful.
Right. To repair, not inflict more pain.
Yeah.
Okay, so full transparency. That's a huge first step. What else falls under crisis management?
Well, in our digital age, a digital detox can be incredibly helpful, like jointly blocking the affair partner on all platforms so there's no temptation to reconnect.
Ooh, yeah, removing that temptation is
Yeah.
huge. Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Exactly. And sometimes, and this one's a bit more controversial, temporary password sharing can be part of rebuilding trust.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I can see how that could feel like a violation of privacy for some people.
It definitely can be. And it's not something I recommend for every couple. It really depends on the situation, the level of betrayal, and what both partners feel comfortable with.
So it's a conversation to have, but not necessarily a requirement.
Exactly. It's about finding what works for that specific couple and their unique needs.
Got it. So transparency and maybe a digital detox, those are the first steps. But even after the initial crisis is managed, how do you actually begin to repair the emotional damage?
That's where the second step on the recovery roadmap comes in, root cause analysis.
Root cause analysis, okay.
Right.
So getting to the bottom of why this happened in the first place.
Exactly. And this is where things get a little deeper. It's not about placing blame, but about understanding the unmet needs that led to this situation. Because, like they say, hurt people hurt people.
So true. And it makes sense, right? If your needs aren't being met in the relationship, you're more likely to seek them elsewhere, even if it's unconsciously.
Precisely. So some important questions to ask during this phase are, what were you hoping to get from this other person? What was missing in your relationship? Were you starved for validation, intellectual stimulation? Did you feel unseen or unheard by your partner?
Those are some heavy-hitting questions,
Hmm.
and it's got to be tough to face those truths. both for the person who strayed and the person who was betrayed.
It is, but until you identify the root cause, you're just putting a Band-Aid on a deeper wound. It's like if you have a leaky pipe in your house, you can keep mopping up the water, but until you fix the pipe itself, the problem's just going to keep coming back.
Love that analogy. So fix the leaky pipe, address the root cause, then what? How do you actually start restoring intimacy and trust?
That's the third phase of the roadmap, intimacy restoration. And this one is all about getting intentional.
Intentional. Okay, so not just hoping things will magically go back to normal.
Right, it takes effort, commitment, and a willingness to be vulnerable with each other again. The source suggests things like daily reminders of why you chose each other in the first place. Maybe love notes, words of affirmation, or just sharing a special memory.
Wow, I love that. It's about actively choosing each other every single day. What else?
Scheduling dedicated time for vulnerability is another big one. Maybe a weekly check-in where you talk about your feelings, your needs, and any lingering hurt or resentment.
Those conversations can be so hard though, right? Especially after a betrayal like this.
They definitely can be. But they're also essential for rebuilding trust and emotional intimacy. And it's not just about talking about the hard stuff. It's also about injecting some novelty back into the relationship.
Oh, novelty injections. Didn't one of the sources mention that?
Yes, they highlighted that 87% of couples who successfully recover from affairs credit those novelty injections as being crucial.
Wow, 87%. That's a pretty compelling statistic. So what does novelty actually look like in practice?
It could be anything that brings back that spark of excitement and playfulness. Taking a dance class together, going on a weekend adventure, trying a new hobby, anything that gets you out of your routine and creates new shared experiences. One couple I worked with who were really struggling after an emotional affair actually decided to learn salsa dancing together.
Salsa dancing. That's awesome.
It was. They said it was awkward at first, but they ended up rediscovering that playful energy they'd been missing. And it reminded them of why they fell in love in the first place.
That's so fantastic. It's not just about fixing what's broken. It's about building something even stronger.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the trust piece, because that's a big one to rebuild.
Huge E. And it's probably the part that takes the longest, right?
It can, and it doesn't happen overnight. It requires consistent effort, open communication, and a willingness to be patient with each other.
So what are some practical steps couples can take to rebuild trust?
Well, regular check-ins are super important, like setting aside time each week to talk about how you're both feeling, what's going well, and any triggers or insecurity that might be coming up.
Yeah, creating that safe space for open communication is so key.
It really is. And sometimes it might involve agreeing on some safeguards to prevent future slip-ups. Like maybe you decide together to set boundaries with work spouses or to limit social media interactions that make you feel uncomfortable.
So like proactively addressing those potential triggers.
Exactly. It's about taking responsibility both individually and as a couple to create a relationship that feels safe and secure for both of you. And, there's this idea that the sources call creating an emotional first aid protocol.
Oh, that's an interesting concept. What does that mean?
Basically, it's about having a plan in place for how to handle conflicts constructively. Like, what are some healthy coping mechanisms you can use when you're feeling triggered or overwhelmed? How can you communicate your needs assertively without resorting to blame or defensiveness?
So it's about building those skills and strategies in advance so you're better equipped to navigate those choppy emotional waters.
I love that. It's so much more proactive than just waiting for things to explode and then trying to pick up the pieces.
Right. It's about being intentional and building a strong foundation for the relationship.
Okay, so we've talked about what emotional cheating is, why it happens, and how to recover from it if it does. But is there a way to, like, affair-proof a relationship in the first place? Or is that just wishful thinking?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right.
And while there are no guarantees in life, the sources we explored offer some really valuable prevention strategies that can significantly reduce the risk.
Lay 'em on us. I'm all ears.
Well, they talk about this idea of a relationship maintenance kit. And one of the key components is maintaining a 5.1 ratio of positive to negative interactions.
5.1. Okay, so for every one negative interaction, argument, disagreement, whatever you need, 5 positive interactions to counterbalance it. Exactly. And it might sound cheesy, but those small gestures of love and appreciation go a long way. Things like expressing gratitude, offering compliments, engaging in playful communication, physical touch. all those things that make you feel loved and connected.
Oh yeah, those little everyday moments of connection are so important. It's so easy to get caught up in the daily grind and forget to nourish our relationships.
It really is. And that's why this 5.1 ratio is such a valuable tool. It's a reminder to be intentional about creating those positive interactions, even when life gets busy.
Totally. So relationship maintenance is key. What about on an individual level? Is there anything we can do personally to, like, strengthen our own affair antibodies?
There absolutely is. One of the sources calls it building your inner resilience. And a big part of that is improving your conflict resolution skills, learning how to communicate your needs assertively, manage your emotions effectively, and work through disagreements constructively.
Because let's be honest, conflicts are inevitable in any relationship. It's how we handle them that makes all the difference.
100%. And another crucial aspect of personal resilience is cultivating self-validation.
Ooh, self-validation. I love that. Tell me more.
If you're constantly seeking validation externally from your partner, your friends, social media, whoever, you're much more vulnerable to seeking it in unhealthy ways. But when you learn to validate yourself, to recognize your own worth and value, you're less likely to look for it in all the wrong places.
So it's about being secure in yourself and your relationship. Because when you're feeling good about yourself, you're less likely to seek that external validation from someone else. Makes total sense.
It does, right. And speaking of seeking validation, the sources also highlight the importance of the third-party rule.
The third-party rule, okay? What's that all about?
It's about talking openly and honestly with your partner about your friendships and opposite-sex connections from the very beginning.
Oh, so like setting those expectations and boundaries early on.
Exactly. It's about transparency and communication. Like, talk to your partner about who you're spending time with, what you're talking about, and what your intentions are. And be willing to listen to their concerns and respect their boundaries as well.
That open communication, that mutual respect, it builds trust from the get-go. And when you have that foundation of trust, you're less likely to stray, either emotionally or physically.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It all comes back to communication, doesn't it?
It really does. Well, wow, we covered so much ground today. Emotional cheating is a complex topic, but understanding the warning signs, being proactive, and fostering open communication can make a huge difference in protecting our relationships.
Absolutely. And something that really resonated with me from one of the sources was this idea that courageous vulnerability is the antidote to secret intimacy.
Ooh, I love that. Courageous vulnerability. It's about having those tough conversations, being honest about our needs, and risking discomfort for the sake of deeper connection.
Exactly. And it might be scary, but it's also incredibly powerful. So my question for everyone listening is, what small step can you take today to foster more openness and deeper connection in your own relationships?
Such a great question. It could be a simple conversation with your partner, a heartfelt gesture of appreciation, or even just a commitment to your own emotional well-being. Every little bit counts.
It really does.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive. Thanks for all your insights. I know I learned a ton.
Me too. Always fun chatting with you.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us. Be sure to share this deep dive with anyone who might benefit from it. And as always, remember, knowledge is power. Let's all keep learning and growing together.
Here, here.
Until next time.
Hi, everyone.